The morning sun hit my face as I woke up to Daniel standing by my bed, his face pale and eyes avoiding mine. What he had whispered and done last night after the party had just blown up our entire friendship in ways I never saw coming. I sat up slowly, my head pounding from the cheap vodka and loud music that had filled our Lincoln Park apartment until 3 in the morning. Daniel was still wearing the same wrinkled button-down from the night before, his dark hair messy in a way that made him look younger than his 28 years. We had been roommates for 5 years, best friends since our sophomore year at the University of Illinois, the kind of guys who finished each other's sentences and knew exactly how the other took his coffee. Ethan, the marketing coordinator who could talk his way out of anything, and Daniel, the quiet software engineer who fixed my laptop every time it crashed. Straight guys. Brothers. Until that one stupid moment on the dance floor when the lights were low and the beat was heavy. I rubbed my eyes and tried to laugh it off like I always did with our inside jokes. Dude, you look like you saw a ghost. Rough night. My voice came out hoarse, cracking on the last word. Daniel finally met my gaze, and the raw fear in his brown eyes stopped me cold. He took a shaky breath and sat on the edge of the bed, hands clasped so tight his knuckles turned white. Ethan, I can't pretend anymore. Last night wasn't just the alcohol talking. I felt this way for months, maybe longer. When I kissed you, it wasn't a mistake. It was the first honest thing I've done in years. The words hung between us like smoke from the party's leftover haze. I opened my mouth, but nothing came out. My heart hammered so loud I was sure he could hear it. Me? Kissed by my straight roommate? The same guy who had high-fived me after every Cubs win and helped me move on from my last breakup with Sarah? I wanted to tell him he was drunk, that it meant nothing, but the way his shoulders trembled told me this was real. We sat in silence for what felt like hours. The apartment smelled like stale beer and regret. Outside, Chicago traffic hummed along Fullerton Avenue, normal people starting their Saturday like nothing had changed. But everything had. I finally managed to speak, my voice barely above a whisper. Daniel, I don't know what to say. I've never. He cut me off gently, placing a hand on my knee for just a second before pulling it back like he'd been burned. You don't have to say anything right now. I just couldn't keep lying to you. Or to myself. Tears welled in his eyes, and seeing my best friend so vulnerable cracked something inside me I didn't know was there. We spent the rest of the morning cleaning up the empty cups and pizza boxes in awkward silence, stealing glances when the other wasn't looking. Every time our eyes met, the memory of his lips on mine flashed back. Soft, hesitant, desperate. By noon, I was pacing the living room while Daniel made coffee, the same way he had 1,000 mornings before. Only this time the air felt electric. I thought about our history, how we had supported each other through everything. My parents' divorce, his first big promotion, the time I got laid off and he covered rent without blinking. We were family. And now this. Part of me wanted to run, to call one of the guys from work and grab a beer and laugh it off as a drunken fluke. But another part, a quieter part one had never listened to before, kept replaying the warmth of that kiss. When Daniel handed me a mug, our fingers brushed and neither of us pulled away. We need to talk about this, I said finally, my voice steadier than I felt. He nodded, relief washing over his face. We sat on the couch, the same one where we had binge-watched every season of The Office, and for the first time in our friendship we talked about feelings instead of football. Daniel told me how he had dated girls in college because it was what everyone expected, how he had pushed down the thoughts for years until the party, the music, my smile under the neon lights made everything spill out. I listened, really listened, and somewhere in the middle of his confession I realized I wasn't angry. I was scared. Scared because deep down I wasn't sure I wanted him to take it back. By the time the sun dipped behind the skyline, we had talked ourselves hoarse. No decisions, no labels, just the truth hanging between us like a promise. I went to bed that night with my mind racing, wondering if our bromance had just become something neither of us could name yet. The next few days blurred into a strange new rhythm. Daniel kept his distance at first, sleeping on the couch and leaving early for his office downtown so we wouldn't have to share the bathroom mirror like usual. I caught him staring when he thought I wasn't looking, and every time our paths crossed in the kitchen, the air thickened with words we weren't ready to say. Work became my escape. At the marketing firm on Michigan Avenue, I threw myself into campaigns for local breweries, laughing too loud with the team during lunch, pretending everything at home was normal. But at night, the apartment felt smaller, the walls closing in with the weight of Daniel's confession. On Wednesday, I finally broke the silence. "We can't keep avoiding each other forever," I said as he heated leftover Thai food. He turned, spoon frozen midair, and for the first time since the party his shoulders relaxed. "I know. I'm sorry. I don't want to lose you, Ethan. If this ruins us, I don't know what I'll do." We ordered pizza, the usual pepperoni and extra cheese, and talked until the box was empty. He told me about the nights he had lain awake wondering if he was broken, the therapy sessions he had started in secret last year, the way my laugh made his chest ache in a way no girlfriend ever had. I admitted things I had never voiced out loud. How I had always felt different but chalked it up to being sensitive. How holding Sarah's hand had felt nice but never electric. "Maybe I'm not straight either," I whispered, the words tasting foreign on my tongue. Daniel reached across the coffee table and took my hand. This time neither of us let go. It was just fingers laced together, nothing more, but it felt like the floor had shifted beneath us. We decided to take it slow, to test the waters without labels or expectations. The next evening we went for a walk along the lakefront, the Chicago skyline glittering behind us like a promise. The wind off Lake Michigan whipped our jackets as we talked about everything and nothing. For the first time since the party, I laughed without forcing it, and when Daniel's shoulder bumped mine, I didn't step away. Back at the apartment, we watched an old movie, sitting closer than usual on the couch. Halfway through, his head rested lightly against my shoulder and I didn't move. The next morning, I woke up to the smell of pancakes, his way of saying thank you. We ate in comfortable silence, stealing shy smiles like teenagers. But the fear never left. At work, my coworker Jake asked why I looked distracted. I lied and said it was just a late night. Daniel texted me during the day, simple things like, "Thinking about you." That made my stomach flip. I realized I was falling, or maybe I had already fallen years ago and never noticed. The weekend brought our first real test. We drove out to a quiet park in the suburbs, away from prying eyes, and sat on a bench watching families picnic. Daniel turned to me and said, "If this is too much, tell me now. I'll move out. I'll do whatever you need." His voice cracked and I saw the same vulnerability from that first morning. I shook my head and pulled him into a hug, the kind we had given each other 1,000 times, except this one lingered. "I don't want you to go anywhere," I whispered into his shoulder. When we pulled back, his eyes were wet, and for the first time I leaned in and kissed him, soft, deliberate, sober. The world didn't end. It just felt right. The bubble didn't last. Daniel's parents announced a surprise visit from their small town in Indiana the following Friday. We spent 3 days cleaning the apartment like it was inspection day, hiding any trace of the new closeness between us. His mom hugged me the moment she walked in, calling me our second son, like always, while his dad clapped me on the back and asked about the Cubs. Dinner was normal on the surface. Pot roast, small talk about work, but I caught Daniel's mom watching us a little too closely when our hands brushed passing the salt. Later that night, after his parents went to bed in the guest room, Daniel and I sat on the fire escape sharing a single beer. "They can never know," he said quietly. "Dad still uses words I can't repeat." Mom would cry for weeks. The weight of his fear pressed down on me. I had always known his family was conservative, church every Sunday, but hearing it from him now made it real. The next day his dad pulled me aside while Daniel and his mom were at the grocery store. "You're a good influence on him, Ethan. Keep him on the straight path, son." The irony burned. I smiled and nodded, but inside I felt sick. That evening we all watched a baseball game on TV, and when Daniel's leg pressed against mine under the blanket, I had to fight not to react. Sunday morning his parents left, but the tension stayed. Daniel barely spoke for 2 days afterward. I tried to give him space, But every time I saw him staring at his phone, rereading old family texts, my chest ached. One night, I found him crying in the bathroom. I pulled him into my arms without a word, and he clung to me like I was the only solid thing left. "I hate hiding," he whispered, "but I can't lose them." We stayed like that until the sun rose, and in that moment I understood the real cost of what we were building. The following week, my own family called. My sister in California inviting us both for Thanksgiving. I lied and said we had work deadlines. The secrecy was starting to feel like a cage. At work, Jake noticed I was distracted again and joked about girl trouble. I laughed it off, but inside I wondered how long I could keep pretending. Daniel and I started arguing about little things, whose turn to do dishes, what to watch, because neither of us knew how to talk about the big thing. One night, the argument escalated. "Maybe this was a mistake," he snapped, and the words hit like a punch. I stormed out and walked the streets for hours, the Chicago wind cutting through my jacket. When I came back, he was waiting by the door, eyes red. We apologized in the hallway, foreheads pressed together, and promised to figure it out together. But the cracks were showing, and I didn't know if love would be enough to hold us. The rumor started small. Jake from the office cornered me by the coffee machine on Monday and said, "Dude, someone saw you and Daniel holding hands at the lake last weekend. You two together or something?" My stomach dropped. I denied it too quickly, laughed it off as a bro hug, but the damage was done. By Wednesday, the whispers followed me to meetings. My boss pulled me aside and asked if everything was okay at home. I said yes, but the lie tasted bitter. Daniel's face when I told him that night was pure panic. "This is exactly what I was afraid of," he said, pacing the living room. "If my family hears we fought again," louder this time, accusations flying about who was more careful, who had wanted to go public first. I slammed the bedroom door and spent the night staring at the ceiling, wondering if our secret had already cost us everything. The next day at work, Jake apologized, saying he had been joking, but the seed had been planted. A client meeting ran long, and I came home late to find Daniel packing a bag. "I need space," he said quietly. "This is getting too heavy." I begged him to stay, told him we could fix it, but he left anyway, crashing at a friend's place across town. The apartment felt empty without him. I called in sick the next day and sat on the couch replaying every moment since the party. The betrayal from Jake stung, but losing Daniel hurt worse. I texted him every few hours with no reply. On Friday night, I drove to his friend's building and waited outside until he came down. We sat in my car in silence for 10 minutes before he finally spoke. "I'm scared, Ethan. Scared of losing my family. Scared of losing you. Scared of who I am." I took his hand and didn't let go. "Then let's be scared together." He came home that night, and we held each other until the fear felt a little smaller. But the damage from the rumor lingered. My boss suggested I take a short leave to sort things out. Daniel's sister called asking strange questions about why he sounded distant. The world was closing in, and for the first time I wondered if love between two men in America could really survive the weight of everyone else's expectations. I tried to fix things the only way I knew how, by pretending everything was fine. I went on a date with a girl from accounting, hoping the old life would feel right again. Her name was Megan, sweet and funny. But when she leaned in for a goodnight kiss, I felt nothing but guilt. Daniel found out through a mutual friend, and the hurt in his eyes when I walked through the door was worse than any fight we had ever had. "You're running," he said quietly. "I get it. Maybe I should too." He slept on the couch again, and the distance between us grew into miles. I spent a weekend at my sister's in California, telling her everything except the truth. She hugged me and said I seemed lost. On the flight home, I stared out the window at the clouds and realized I was lost. Lost without Daniel. When I got back, he had left a note on the kitchen table. "I need time to figure out who I am without dragging you down." The apartment felt like a tomb. I called him every day, left voicemails apologizing, telling him I was done pretending. Weeks passed. Work gave me a project in the suburbs to keep me busy, but every night I came home to silence. One rainy Thursday, I drove to the park where we had shared our first real kiss and sat on the same bench until the sun set. My phone buzzed. Daniel. Can we talk? We met at our favorite coffee shop on Belmont. He looked thinner, eyes tired but determined. I almost lost myself trying to be what everyone wanted, he said. But I can't lose you too. We talked for hours, laying every fear on the table. I told him about the fake date, how it proved nothing felt right without him. He admitted he had gone to a support group and realized hiding was slowly killing him. We didn't kiss that night. We just held hands across the table and promised to fight for each other instead of against the world. The next morning he moved back in, and for the first time in weeks the apartment felt like home again. Spring arrived in Chicago with warmer winds off the lake, and with it came our quiet decision to stop hiding. We told my family first over a video call. My sister cried happy tears. My mom hugged the screen and said she had always suspected. Daniel's family was harder. We drove to Indiana together one Saturday, hands clasped the whole way. His mom listened in stunned silence while his dad paced the living room. Words were said, hurtful ones, but we stood firm. He's my son, his mom finally whispered, pulling Daniel into a hug while tears streamed down her face. His dad didn't speak for weeks, but he didn't slam the door either. It was a start. At work I came out to Jake and the team during a casual lunch. The support surprised me, high fives and about-time jokes that made me laugh until I cried. Daniel's company offered sensitivity training after he spoke to HR. Life didn't become perfect overnight, but it became honest. We moved to a bigger place near the lake, painted the walls together, and started building a future instead of hiding in the shadows. On a warm June evening, we walked the same lakeshore where everything had begun to change. The city lights sparkled across the water as Daniel stopped and turned to me. "Thank you for staying," he said softly. I pulled him close, and under the bright sky we kissed like no one was watching because finally we didn't care who was. The man I had once called my roommate had become my home. True or false? In the end, choosing love over societal expectations always leads to a better life.